Okay. Okay, so this actually is from a while ago, but it was so interesting. I was going to use the word ridiculous, but I think interesting is more appropriate here, that I wanted to make a video about it nonetheless. We are in the midst of summer, and we've been talking all about trade ideas because, unfortunately, we haven't seen too many actual trades go down. And when it comes to the Detroit Red Wings, not only has goaltender Sebastian Cosa's name been tossed around there in various trade conversations, but apparently Cam Talbot's name has been in there too? Yeah, let's dive into this here. So, last time we made a video talking about Red Wings goaltender trades. It was in a discussion talking about Sebastian Cossa, and how the acquisition of John Gibson, the presence of Cam Talbot, and the further acquisition of Michael Postava potentially puts Cosa's role with the Wings and their development system in jeopardy. Not to mention the fact that you have Trey Augustine chilling in the system as well. He happens to be a very talented goaltender that remains unsigned. But Cam Talbot is projected to being the Red Wings' backup for this upcoming year. When you consider the fact that this most recent year he had a .901 save percentage in 47 games played, and his overall body of work, I think it's reasonable to say that Cam Talbot should be considered a good goalie. Good enough to be a #1 starter on a cup-contending team, maybe not that good, but as a suitable enough backup to John Gibson and the body of work Gibson has provided the Anaheim Ducks, I think Talbot is fine. In his heyday, he was posting up 919s and 915s, and even in 23-24 with the Kings, he had a 913. But if you go back to 2015 to 2017, you'll see that Cam Talbot was a 73 games played goaltender for the Edmonton Oilers. He had a .919 save percentage and a .239 goals against in that season. Lo and behold, that was literally like 9 years ago. He had 7 shutouts, went 42-22-8, and in the playoffs for the Edmonton Oilers, Cam Talbot had a .924 save percentage, a .248 GAA in 13 games played. The Oilers in this time frame were still led by some of the top guys that we know and love today. Connor McDavid at 100 points, Leon Draisaitl, still evolving into what he inevitably became, had 77 points. But look at the rest of this team. Eberle had 51 points, Lucic 50 points, the Nuge had only 40 points. You had Patty Maroon, Oscar Klefbom, and Mark Letestu on this team, but it was that gosh darn goaltending, Laurent Brossoit with his .928, and Cam Talbot that ended up sealing the deal and allowing this Oilers team to succeed and go as far as they did. Of course, Connor McDavid helps too. Which is why we go over onto this article that was published on yahoosports.com on August 14th, 2025, that discusses the idea of that very same .919 Cam Talbot surfacing in Red Wings and Oilers trade rumors. Oh boy. This is where the article dives into the Edmonton and Detroit discourse. It talks about how Sebastian Cossa has been involved there, but it also says that Mattias Ekholm and Cam Talbot could potentially be in play too. Let's scroll down over here. Less credible sources have began to throw out other names and trade packages that have included multiple big names like Mattias Ekholm, Cam Talbot, and Justin Hall, as well as several other prospects that would likely work as filler to get a deal done. Trade ideas from Heavy.com are talking about Ekholm and other names out there. The Oilers were one of the teams involved in trade talks for John Gibson before Detroit inevitably won those sweepstakes for the former All-Star goalie. It's tough to say what deal they'll decide to go with, as both sides are in a win-now type of mode, meaning a deal for picks or prospects doesn't seem likely. If Sebastian Cossa is dealt to Edmonton, he'll likely become a strong contender for the starting job and will almost certainly see NHL time next season. This deal could immediately include help for the blue line with the aforementioned Ekholm, who is still an impact player, but is 35 years old and entering the final season of his 4-year deal with a cap hit at $6.25 million. Now, that's really interesting to me, because when we made the video a few days ago, if we scroll back here in our YouTube archives, go all the way back here, we made a video talking about DeBrincat for Ekholm, and how that was a crazy idea, where it's like, yeah, do the Red Wings want to take on a guy who's super old like Ekholm, who happens to be good, but do all this for Alex DeBrincat? This idea, however, if it's Sebastian Cossa for Mattias Ekholm, yeah, okay, say what you want about whether or not Sebastian Cossa is ready to be a starting goaltender for Edmonton and outduel Stu Skinner and Cal Pickard. But when you think about the potential return, I mean, Mattias Ekholm is pretty old. He's pretty good. I do think he would help out the Detroit Red Wings. I just don't really feel comfortable sending away an Alex DeBrincat-like asset for him. If it's Cossa, though, I start to really think about it more. You go further down and you think about some of the other names that have been tossed out there. I mean, this article literally names Cam Talbot as a potential candidate. I start to think about Cam Talbot and the fact that he's 38 years old. If you go over to Mattias Ekholm, he also is in his mid to late 30s as well. I mean, Ekholm's 35, Talbot's 38. Both of these guys are older. If you wanted to make the argument that Cam Talbot may not necessarily be utilized in Detroit as much as he could be this upcoming season, I'm all here for that. Sure, you would prefer to have Talbot on the Red Wings because having a tandem of Gibson-Talbot seems a lot more sustainable for 82 games than a tandem of, let's say, Gibson and Postava or Gibson and Cossa. I don't necessarily know if Sebastian Cossa is fully ready to take that next step and be a backup in the National Hockey League this upcoming season. But of course, if you are a lot more optimistic on Cossa, you see his .911 save percentage in Grand Rapids, and you say, yeah, that guy deserves to be in the National Hockey League. He's earned himself a spot. Feel free, that's totally your prerogative. I just kind of think of it like, yeah, Cam Talbot is already a very solidified name, but he is so solidified that if a team like Edmonton were to be calling about this dude, who does have a history with that city and that team in the past, it wouldn't not make sense to me. Like, I could understand the rationale behind it. If Edmonton was already calling about Cossa because they want a young goaltender who is supposed to be essentially what Stuart Skinner was supposed to be, then I can understand that thought process. But if Cam Talbot was also in that discussion, it's like, hey, they want a guy who's already good enough to be an NHL starter now, that can handle the workload that the Edmonton top goalie is probably going to receive. Cam Talbot has proven that he can do that. He did that 10 years ago. He's been doing that recently. I mean, there's nothing to discredit with Talbot, with the exception of his age. So all of a sudden, I start thinking about whether or not that actually is possible here. But if the Oilers, of course, are looking for longevity long-term, not just in this upcoming season, but over the next few years, I mean, Cam Talbot's deal expires at the end of 2026. He's making $2.5 million, so that's really cheap. I just don't know whether or not he would really be in a spot to come back next year or a year after that, or when he's 40, for example, and still provide that same value. So from that perspective, if the Oilers are looking at Cossa and they're like, yeah, he can grow into becoming that starter, that makes a lot of sense in my mind as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Ultimately, what are your opinions about this article on Yahoo Sports on Cam Talbot potentially being a Oilers trade target? Do you think this actually makes sense? Do you think Edmonton could revisit the connection they had with Talbot? And what do you think the price is? Mattias Ekholm is labeled as somebody that has been tossed out there in trade rumors. Do you think this actually works out as an idea? Do you think it's total lunacy? Let me know in the comments all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.